the most invulnerable new god, the most invulnerable new gods, a most invulnerable new god, the most invulnerable new goddess, the most invulnerable new goddesses, a most invulnerable new goddess, the most invulnerable old god, the most invulnerable old gods, a most invulnerable old god, the most invulnerable old goddess, the most invulnerable old goddesses, a most invulnerable old goddess, the most invulnerable greater god, the most invulnerable greater gods, a most invulnerable greater god, the most invulnerable greater goddess, the most invulnerable greater goddesses, a most invulnerable greater goddess, the most invulnerable lesser god, the most invulnerable lesser gods, a most invulnerable lesser god, the most invulnerable lesser goddess, the most invulnerable lesser goddesses, a most invulnerable lesser goddess, the most invulnerable greater spirit, the most invulnerable greater spirits, a most invulnerable greater spirit, the most invulnerable lesser spirit, the most invulnerable lesser spirits, a most invulnerable lesser spirit, the most invulnerable major god, the most invulnerable major gods, a most invulnerable major god, the most invulnerable major goddess, the most invulnerable major goddesses, a most invulnerable major goddess, the most invulnerable minor god, the most invulnerable minor gods, a most invulnerable minor god, the most invulnerable minor goddess, the most invulnerable minor goddesses, a most invulnerable minor goddess, the most invulnerable superior god, the most invulnerable superior gods, a most invulnerable superior god, the most invulnerable superior goddess, the most invulnerable superior goddesses, a most invulnerable superior goddess, the most invulnerable inferior god, the most invulnerable inferior gods, a most invulnerable inferior god, the most invulnerable inferior goddess, the most invulnerable inferior goddesses, a most invulnerable inferior goddess, the most invulnerable ancestor god, the most invulnerable ancestor gods, a most invulnerable ancestor god, the most invulnerable ancestor goddess, the most invulnerable ancestor goddesses, a most invulnerable ancestor goddess, the most invulnerable ascendant god, the most invulnerable ascendant gods, a most invulnerable ascendant god, the most invulnerable ascendant goddess, the most invulnerable ascendant goddesses, a most invulnerable ascendant goddess, the most invulnerable descendant god, the most invulnerable descendant gods, a most invulnerable descendant god, the most invulnerable descendant goddess, the most invulnerable descendant goddesses, a most invulnerable descendant goddess, the most invulnerable transcendent god, the most invulnerable transcendent gods, a most invulnerable transcendent god, the most invulnerable transcendent goddess, the most invulnerable transcendent goddesses, a most invulnerable transcendent goddess, the most invulnerable future god, the most invulnerable future gods, a most invulnerable future god, the most invulnerable future goddess, the most invulnerable future goddesses, a most invulnerable future goddess, the most invulnerable present god, the most invulnerable present gods, a most invulnerable present god, the most invulnerable present goddess, the most invulnerable present goddesses, a most invulnerable present goddess, the most invulnerable past god, the most invulnerable past gods, a most invulnerable past god, the most invulnerable past goddess, the most invulnerable past goddesses, a most invulnerable past goddess, the most invulnerable god, the most invulnerable gods, a most invulnerable god, the most invulnerable goddess, the most invulnerable goddesses, a most invulnerable goddess, the most invulnerable half-god, the most invulnerable half-gods, a most invulnerable half-god, the most invulnerable half-goddess, the most invulnerable half-goddesses, a most invulnerable half-goddess, the most invulnerable vessel, the most invulnerable vessels, a most invulnerable vessel, the most invulnerable person, the most invulnerable persons, a most invulnerable person, the most invulnerable image, the most invulnerable images, a most invulnerable image, the most invulnerable belief, the most invulnerable beliefs, a most invulnerable belief, the most invulnerable thought, the most invulnerable thoughts, a most invulnerable thought, the most invulnerable word, the most invulnerable words, a most invulnerable word, the most invulnerable action, the most invulnerable actions, a most invulnerable action, the most invulnerable situation, The most invulnerable situations. A most invulnerable situation. The most invulnerable circumstance. The most invulnerable circumstances. A most invulnerable circumstance. The most invulnerable relationship. The most invulnerable relationships. A most invulnerable relationship. The most invulnerable number. The most invulnerable numbers. A most invulnerable number. The most invulnerable formula. The most invulnerable formulas. A most invulnerable formula. The most invulnerable symbol. The most invulnerable symbols. A most invulnerable symbol. The most invulnerable color. The most invulnerable colors. A most invulnerable color. The most invulnerable thing. The most invulnerable things. A most invulnerable thing. The most invulnerable way. The most invulnerable ways. A most invulnerable way. The most invulnerable place. The most invulnerable places. A most invulnerable place. The most invulnerable time. The most invulnerable times. A most invulnerable time. The most invulnerable event. The most invulnerable events. A most invulnerable event. The most invulnerable result. The most invulnerable results. A most invulnerable result.